Hello and welcome to probably my most anticipated video to date, the Nrl Ladder Predictions 2023. It's going to be Asset Ripper video. If you like it, make sure you drop a like and hit the red button, subscribe, and drop a comment about where you think your team will be. But let's get straight into it. At 17th, this one does kind of sting a little bit, but I've got the Dragons getting the wooden spoon. And honestly, it's probably because they've had potentially the worst off-season of all time. Like, you've got Ben Hunt's interview at the World Cup where he basically said that if they underperform for the first 4 to 6 weeks, then Hook's out the door. And this is coming after all these players didn't rock up to their presentation. So they obviously don't like either Hook or definitely some higher ups at the club. So if they have a way to get him out, they're going to do it. So I obviously don't see them going very well to start the season to try and get Hook out. But at the same time, these guys are professional footballers and this is their job, so you don't want to underperform at your job because then they'll get dropped. But anyway, you've also had the poor old Cody Ramsey incident getting real crook. Still don't know if he's going to be able to play this season, and like where his health is at, because I haven't really had an update. You've also had the whole name change fiasco, which was just blown out of proportion and shouldn't have even been a thing at all. Craig Young putting his name, like the club letterhead on his was it testimonial, whatever it was, as well as Junior Ramon recently going out and getting himself into legal trouble. And then even like just the club signings, brought in 2 reserve graders, essentially 3 reserve graders. Like the only signings are Nick Tuiloso, Zane Musgrove and Jacob Little. So not a whole lot going on for the Dragons there. And I know Ben Hunt is a fantastic player and carried him a lot last year, but can he have that season back to back? And he is in his 30s, so could see a decline. I really am not looking forward to this season as a Dragons fan. Moving on, so the people I've got ranked from 16th to 8th, I honestly think there's a world where each of them could make the top 8, and obviously I know it's not possible to have 16 teams in top 8, but what I'm more saying is even though I've got this team in 16th, I think there's a way that they could make the top 8. I think there's a lot of clubs this season that are honestly unbelievable. And have improved. Like most clubs in the bottom 8 from last season have improved a lot. And I think the Dragons might be the only team that have actually gone backwards. So, like that shows you like the strength and quality of the competition we've got this season. And I'm really, really sorry to say it, but in 16th, I've got the Warriors. And I do want the Warriors to do well. I think they've had such a wretched run over the last couple of years that like, is there time to have something go their way? But they've got a bunch of really good new signings coming in, but my only concern with that is if one of them don't settle quickly or don't fire, there could be a bit of strife, especially because you've got Nickel Clockstad and Tomato Martin, which look like they're going to be playing in pretty crucial roles for the team in the spine there. So if one of those two guys don't settle as quick as you'd like, then it could be a bit of trouble there. But in saying that though, a lot of the Warriors signings are from New Zealand or have like a Kiwi background or like a Māori background, so that definitely helps them. But look at it this way, so all their home games are back in New Zealand this year, which certainly helps them. So it's got to, like, if they can win 80% of their games at home and then even just win 2 or 3 back in Australia plus the buys, that's like 28 points. So like that could be enough this year to make the finals. So like, they could really gives the Warriors fans some hope at least. But for the Warriors as well, they've also got a new rookie coach in Andrew Webster. And one thing I want to touch on with that, it's like I hope he really does well. But it's just interesting to see the different attitude from the Panthers in terms of like how they've reacted to losing him and losing Serraldo. When they lost Webster, they were like, "Oh, awesome! Like you've gone and got yourself a head coaching job. Like good on you. Like hope you do well." And then with Serraldo, I was like, "No, you're not going. Like we don't want you to go." So that sort of shows that the Panthers rated Serraldo above Webster, which, man, a lot of people do. But hopefully for Webster's sake, he can go out and show that like, he deserves to be a head coach in the NRL. Now, we'll move on to 15th, and I've got the Titans here. They've actually, like, their squad's actually improved a lot, but I just think there's other squads ahead of them that have improved a bit more. Something puts me off the Titans, and I think it might be how much depth they have in the halves. Like, it's really good and creates competition for spots, but I think because a lot of them are around the same sort of level in their career, I think, like, last year we saw it, and I'm scared they're going to do it again, a lot of chopping and changing. Like, I think whatever they decide to do, whether they go with Jaden Campbell at 1, Brimson at 6, 4 and 7, or like AJ at 14 and play Tanner Boyd, or Sexton halfback, or Campbell at 14 and AJ like a fullback, whatever they do, they just need to pick and stick with it for at least the first 10 to 12 weeks and just get some continuity there, help them like build some like really good combinations. Otherwise, it's just going to be the same thing as last year, where they struggle for form because they don't know who's playing week in, week out. But I think like the signing of Foreign is going to really help someone like Fafita to unlock him. He's such an experienced head and his shoulders. He knows exactly where like the spots he needs to get to utilize Fafita to the best of their ability. Last year, they sort of just threw in the ball and went, go do it, work, rather than like setting him up, creating one-on-one opportunities and stuff. He like allowed him to hit holes, which is what they did very well in 2021 when Fogarty was there. So I think Foreign coming in for the Titans is going to be massive. And these guys, like, they made the top 8 in 2021, so there's no real reason why they can't again with a good quality playmaker there. But like, if you're a Titans fan, there is hope there. But I just something's really putting me off, whether it's the coaching style of Holbrook or not. But I just don't know if the Titans have what it takes to make the top 8 this season. Now over to 14, we've got the new boys, the Dolphins. I think while they haven't got a star-studded roster, what they do have is like a good unit, like a well-constructed team built off the back of defense, especially when you see the likes of their edge back rowers in Kenny Bromwich and Kafusi, which might be the best defensive back row we've potentially ever seen. So if there's any chance of making the 8, like, they're going to have to be led by those guys in defense. A lot of people are writing them off and like saying they're going to fail and become like wooden spoon or whatever, but forgetting that they've got one of the best coaches of all time, whose last game he coached was a grand final, and they've got all these guys who have come from really good systems and that, so I don't think they're in any danger of the wooden spoon. But yeah, I also don't see them making the 8 this year. They do need a couple game-breaking guys to come in if they're to improve in future seasons. So now, over in 13th, I have got the Newcastle Knights sitting there. I think they have recruited extremely well for what they needed in their roster. They needed another like solid winger to partner with Dominic Young, and they got Greg Marju in. They also really desperately needed a halfback to direct around the park. They got in Hastings, but there's a couple things that's been spoken about that I don't really agree with at the Knights. But for me, like, the Knights are my smoker to make the 8. I know I've got them in 13, but I really think that they're potentially going to make the 8. They've got one of the best 4-packs in the comp, and I don't think that's even in question, especially with the Saifidi boys. So as I said, like, I think Hastings will prove to be a pivotal signing for them, because all they needed last year was someone to direct the pack around the park and take some pressure off Ponga, and I think that's exactly what Hastings provides for that team. There's also been a lot of chat around Ponga playing 6. To me, it doesn't make sense, because you brought in Tyson Gamble, who's a decent 6 and do a job for you, and Ponga's done real fullback. We've seen it in Origin, like, time and time again. He just needs to be able to find that form at club level, which I think he can with a few like the new signings there. But if they are going to pick him at 6, they need to keep him there, not do what they did last time and play him there for a few weeks and then straight back. Because if he's playing there, he's going to be there training there all pre-season, so you can't just go flip him back. Turn your back on that after like a month of footy, and then you need to just give him a year there to gel with Hastings and to gel with the other guys, develop combinations, because they've got his name's Will Price coming in next year from England, who's like a gun fullback, and that's who they sort of look at their future fullback, and then that's why they're playing Ponga at 6. So you need to give him a year at 6 so that he understands how to play it before Will Price comes in, and it's going to help both of those guys out for the future. But yeah, for this year, I think Knights come in 13th. Move on to 12th. This is where I've got Manly. Manly is like, they could be a bottom 4 team or a top 4 team. That's the kind of team they are. That's why I've got them in the middle. Luckily for Manly fans, Turbo is going to be fit for round 1. Fingers crossed, there's no delay on his recovery. And if he can get 20 plus games in this season, then really, like, they're a sniff for the top 8. Another factor for Manly that excites me this season is Josh Schuster has been tipped to get the nod and has been stripped a lot of weight down and looks really fit to get his body, and it's just so his body's better suited the role, and like he can rack up the Ks that you need to do, like to play in the halves in the NRL. I just hope his confidence is back after he had a pretty poor season last season, so I hope his confidence is back up. Manly also though have KO Weeks that can play 6, so you get a couple youngsters there vying for that spot, and it's gonna really make or break Manly's year, like this 6 role, and I think it's good that you've got these like bit of competition for places. Like KO Weeks probably isn't that far behind Schuster for that 6 role. He's had he's got a lot of raps on him, but I'm also like with Manly, I'm extremely interested to see how Seabold plays this team. I think like they needed a bit of a shake up after Desi. Like you got players like Jake Jabojevic, whose role sort of just become a bit of a batting ram and a decoy, where we know and we've seen it before, he can be so much more than that. So interesting to see if how Sibold utilises him, if he changes his role at all, if he moves into the front row, if he keeps him at lock, like what's he going to do? Because I think moving forward, like Schuster would be a great 13. He's got like the frame for it, good ball playing, and can like impact like the defensive line. And I think like if you have Schuster at 13, Weeks at 6, it's a pretty good combination you got going there. But that's just from outside looking in. Like internally, they might have tried that and just think, oh, I don't know if it's going to work. But yeah, for me, Manly, one of those teams that like I think they're going to finish 12th, but it's probably going to be like 2 games outside the top 8. I think they're going to be thereabouts all year, be very competitive. But again, it all depends on Turbo's fitness. So moving on to number 11, and if you're a Tigers fan, you're pretty happy about the fact you're not coming last. This is where I got you guys this season, and there's so much to be excited about if you're a Tigers fan. Like things are finally looking up, although I still think you miss out on the finals again. But new signings you've made alongside new coaching staff, there's just a new feel about the Titans. I know there's a lot of backroom staff that are still there that I don't know if things will change, but at least there's a new feel and a bit of like a positive atmosphere around the Tigers. However, the things like historically for the Tigers, these things don't work out for them. Like these signings will come in like Coruscant and stuff. You need to make sure they're still motivated to actually achieve. Like he's just been at one of the best teams we've ever seen, especially in the NRL era, and he's going to one of the worst teams we've potentially ever seen in the NRL era. So you need to be able to make sure he doesn't just get frustrated. And Papali'i as well, when we saw him at the Warriors, he was a bit lazy, that sort of thing. Like there was always the potential, but it wasn't until he got to the Parramatta and they like sort of gave him a kick up the arse that he started playing really well. So it'd be interesting to see whether he continues that, whether he's like a new man, his attitude's changed, or if he goes back to the way he was. Hopefully for Tigers fans they don't, but I think regardless, their forward pack this year is actually ridiculous. In front row is Clemmer, Offhand Gowie, and then Stefano and Twall off the bench. Like that's crazy. And then you got Papali'i and Bateman in the second row. I think Tigers will be fine. I think it'll be a lot like more competitive this year and will improve out of sight. But I still don't see them making the 8. Now over to number 10. Got the one team I think will drop out of the 8 from last year. That's the Raiders. Fortunately for Raiders fans, I think out of every team around that era, the team that's like sort of failed to improve. Anything sort of gone a little bit backwards because they've lost Adam Elliott, which I think is going to hurt them a lot more than people think, especially if Trademark doesn't hit the ground running. I know there's talk that Corey Harawira-Naera was going to take that 13 role, but I think it's Trey Mooney's in the long term. He's young, he's an absolute beast, but I think I suppose if you play Corey Harawira-Naera to start the season, and if he doesn't improve as much as you want, then you start giving Trey Mooney more and more minutes. But I don't know. At the same time, though, this is exactly how the Raiders like to be. Sort of consider the underdogs, not really people aren't putting the respect on their names. I mean, mostly me, but you have a team that has Joseph Tarpanay in his absolute prime, killing teams, Jack White and then Ricky Stewart at the helm. Like making finals definitely isn't out of the question. And honestly, props to Ricky because every single year he has the Raiders thereabouts. So again, you can't really write them off, but for me, I just think out of all the teams that made the 8 last year, they're the ones that I see slipping out. Now, this team I got coming in at 9th is probably the most hyped up team every single year coming into the comp because their fans are just so, honestly, so passionate and crazy. But the Doggies, I think, finished just one spot outside the top 8. The Dogs have really, really bolstered their squad in key areas. And, Reed Marnie is going to change the way that team plays dramatically. And then as well, bringing in Strike on the edges with kick hours, amazing. And then Tavita Pangai Jr., he looks fired up and ready to go. He looks so super fit. And Serraldo gave him the challenge to lose some weight, otherwise he's not in the team. And you can see he's taking that on board. And he's really looking like he's ready just to finally reach his potential. The one worry with the Dogs is how Cameron Serraldo will adjust to being a full-time coach. And then I think Gus has a big role to play in that because if he just puts his arm around him and says, look, this is your team for at least 3 years, doesn't matter where we finish, they could absolutely take off and be top 4 in a couple of years' time. But given Gus's track record, he might get a bit frustrated and he might get given the punt. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen. I think Serraldo's an amazing coach, but if he does get given the punt, go to the Dragons. But I think they do miss the finals again this year, but 2024 is the chance to make a huge impact. I think there's a potential that they might get in a new half. that sort of thing. I think Flanagan's still an area they're looking to upgrade, but the Dogs team this year looks absolutely stacked. Their back line's really good. Their 4-pack's been bolstered, so I think, and their depth has improved as well with guys like Franklin Pele coming in and Andrew Davey. So I think the Dogs are really a team to watch this year. It's going to be quite exciting to see how they improve. Over to the first team in the top 8, the team that should have made the top 8 last season, the Brisbane Broncos. I think they really need to make the finals this season. There's no excuse this year. Hopefully they've found the reason for their form slump at the end of this, at the end of the year, and they've taken steps to correct that. I know, literally, so I'm recording this on a Monday. Literally yesterday there was a thing coming out about Selwyn Cobbo, and it was just supposedly he was taking the piss and having a bit of a laugh around and that sort of thing, but still not great to hear, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he might have been mucking around, which I don't think he was, by the way, but I just it doesn't look good for the club anyway. I think if the players have a problem with Kevy, they're not going to get around him, and they're not going to take the extra mile and do the things that they need to do in order to be one of the best teams in the comp. But on the positive, Reece Walsh will help the Broncos immensely, I think. He's going to add a new flair and attack, really unlock those edge guys, and I think he could be a reason why Herbie Farnworth and Staggs sort of reach form together and can be one of the deadliest outside back centre combinations in the comp. But hopefully him and the bloke that just spoke about, Selwyn Cobbo, can keep their errors down. I think they were both top 3 for the errors last season, and if they can really get their ball security up, back in their territory, their field possession will be better. But I think as I said, there's no real excuse for the Broncos not make the top 8 this season. I think they've kept the majority of their squad. They've upgraded in places they need to, and the only thing that I worry as well about them is they're 9. They don't really have a designated 9, but by the end of the season, hopefully Blake Moser kills in Q Cup this year and can get some good minutes toward the end of the season and solve that issue. But moving on to number 7, I've got the Eels dropping off a little bit, and I think that's to be expected with the amount of losses they've had, because the squad's pretty much nearly been decimated with outgoing transfers. But there's still a lot of quality in the Eels lineup, and guys coming in like Jack Murchie and Jermaine Hopgood especially will provide they'll prove to be useful signings. And I honestly think Jermaine Hopgood might potentially take out most improved for this season. Interesting to see where they're playing, because he can play second row and lock, but so can Madison. And I think Madison, he's got the skill set to be the perfect modern day 13, but so does Hopgood as well. So interesting to see where they play them, whether they rotate one off the bench, then play Murchie at second row, or what they do with that vacant second row spot. Josh Hodgson, Eels fans have got me excited about him, because the way they're talking him up, but he's a bit of a downgrade to Reid Marnie. Pay him a lot of money, so he needs to perform. He's older and he's coming off an ACL, so it's a few red flags there. But the core of the team still remains the same. Brad Arthur's still the coach, Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown still the halves, and Gutho's still at the back. So I do think, and their front row is still stacked, and they do have too much quality in their team to miss the 8. I think that's not something that Eels fans need to be worried about, but I don't see them being as close to premiership threats as they were last season, unfortunately for them. Now, over to 6. I think they finished in this spot last year as well, but I've got the Storm. So another team that seems to have lost a lot this offseason, especially they've lost so much experience with the Bromwich brothers going, Kafusi and Smith, but I suppose the back row stocks, at least the forward stocks, have been slightly negated through bringing in Tarek Sims. And as well, an injury-free, back of an injury, missed most of last season. Christian Welch will almost be a new signing for them as well. But I expect Eli Katoa, their signing from the Warriors, to improve immensely in the Storm system. Maybe if it's not this year, at least in 2 or 3 seasons' time, we could be talking about him as one of the better guys in that position. And as well, that Chan they brought in from overseas, and Jack Howarth as well. They look to impress this season. Big, strong forwards. I know they've been playing Howarth a lot at centre in Q Cup, but I think second row is his position, and I think especially with all the they paid him a big contract, and then all of a sudden all these older second rowers go, so I think that's a sign that they're going to play him there. One concern for the Storm is that Pappenhausen's injury recovery, it looks like it's a bit of a concern. It's been delayed. When they released the photos of him in the jersey at the start of the season, his knee looks so swollen. Not at the start of the season, because it hasn't started, a few months ago. It still looks so swollen a few months after his injury. I don't know if he's ever going to return to 100%, which is a bit of a worry for him. But, because I think it's a worry for the Storm in general, because they look a lot better on the field. And what do you do then with the team? keep Munster at fullback and play like Wishart or like Pezzard at 6. I don't know, but Bellamy and those guys will figure it out. See, the thing, like, a lot of people are starting to say this is the end of the Storm dynasty, but as I just said, like, Bellamy's still there, and you've got players like Cameron Munster, Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes. Like, they'll be absolutely fine, and it's the Storm. You can't actually count them out as premiership threats. Like, they could just go on a time they run super well. They have an injury-free season because they had to like decimate by injuries and suspensions and stuff last season. So if they time their run right, you never know. Over to 5th, this is like the second team I feel will drop out of the top 4 this season, and that's the Cowboys. And I don't think they're going to drop out of the top 4 because they've declined or haven't improved, but I think it's just because other teams have got so much better. So I'll be interested to see if the Cowboys run out of puff towards the end of the year, because I don't know if they actually expected to go as deep into the finals as they did last year, so the players might be a bit fatigued, like, because I've had 2 army camps as well, like one last season, one this season, so it'll just be interesting to see if the players' bodies sort of start to burn out. The thing with the Cowboys as well, like I said with the Dolphins earlier, is that like they don't seem to have a really star-studded lineup. Obviously, you've got guys like Valentine Holmes there, Scotty Drinkwater, like Tamalolo, Dean, that sort of thing, but they just really work well together as a team and play for each other. And so I think I absolutely love about the Cowboys, and sort of underrated these days in rugby league. And so I think like with them and like with the players there and Peyton there, they're going to be in the top 8. They're going to be competitive again. But I just see, because of some other clubs going around, I don't know if they're at the top 4 this season again. So speaking of the top 4, onto the first side in there, the Rabbitohs. I am so hyped for the Rabbits this season, especially given the way they ended last year. And like, if Latrell can keep fit and not get suspended and get like a considerable amount of games under his belt, I think the Bunnies could be massive premiership threats. As when he's on the field, they look 10 times a team. And honestly, I think I've got him down as the Dally M winner this year, if he can stay on the field, of course. And then guys like, you got younger blokes like Ilias and Tass, a year older, get some finals experience under the belt, and know how to sort of handle the big like pressure situations. It's really going to help them when it comes to crunch time this season. My only worry for the Rabbits is you've got guys like Cook and Walker that are starting to age, and if they can pick up an injury this season, then they could be in a bit of trouble, because you've got, I suppose, Blake Taff that can come in the halves, but Hooker, you've got, I'm going to butcher his name, but Mamazoulis, I think, like his name is the bloke who played for Greece in the World Cup. Now he's a good player, but is he the guy to like? He's not Damien Cook, is he? Like, he's not going to take your team to the top 4. So hopefully those guys stay injury free. They've had a pretty good run with injuries, but I don't know. It's the one thing that I'm a little bit worried about the Rabbitohs. But for me, yeah, top 4 this season, like, has to be. Anything less on it, like, honestly, for me, it's a failure for them. So now over to 3rd, the Sharkies, right? So out of all the players who played for the in the NRL last season for the Sharks, their only losses are Tolman and Fafita, which account to just 5% of their total minutes anyway. So basically, they're just like running it back. The combinations and everything now have had 2 pre-seasons together. The guys know each other pretty well, so I'm excited for them. Second season under Fitzgibbon, and like if Hines can continue to carry his form over from last season, like I think the Sharks are in a really good position as well. Like, he didn't go to the World Cup where a lot of other team stars did, so that's like really going to help out the Sharks as well, because he's going to be a lot fresher than other guys. And the way Fitzgibbon has slotted into a head coaching role is honestly, like, he's done it absolutely seamlessly, and credit to him. And like, I don't see the Sharks taking any backward steps this season or for future seasons to come, to be honest. I think they've found themselves in a really good situation, so top 4 for them again. Now, my team I got in second, drop off a little bit, is the Penrith Panthers. Back-to-back prems for them. So the Panthers actually have taken a fair bit of hitting talent with Coruscant, which I think is going to be a massive loss, and Kickout departing as well. But like, their depth at that club is insane. They won the comp in the top 4 competitions for the men last season, so they've obviously got the players to back it up. However, though, like, there is some players that might suffer from a bit of fatigue this year, like Fisher Harris and Yo. I mean, Edwards as well, because he just works so hard. But like Hines, he didn't go to the World Cup. But yeah, I do think their roster has come back a few pegs to the rest of the comp. But in saying that as well, like, guys like Luai might actually find a bit hard to adjust this season, because their combination of the left edge has changed, because Kickout's not there. And as well, like, Mitch Kenny, I suppose, has played with Cleary and Luai a lot, but he doesn't know them as well as Corus doesn't know their games as well, so that could be a bit of a problem there as well. But I think the Panthers absolutely fine. Still got probably the best squad in the comp, and they'll be top 4 easy. Now, coming in at minor premiers, I've got the Chooks. Towards the end of this, last season, Roosters really started to click because Kieran Walker started to gel, and they're in red hot form, and until emotions boiled over at the Allianz against the Rabbitohs. But so I was at the game when the Roosters versus the Dragons, and they put on 50 points and started their hot streak. I think the Dragons were up at half time, and then Roosters come out in the second half and just started looking like an absolute just clock ticking over. Everyone got to their spots, and it just ran rings around everyone, and that just changed them. So I think if they have a game like that at the start of the year, then the competition's in a lot of trouble. So as well as the halves gelling, they've also added one of the best nines in the competition in Brendan Smith coming on board, giving him a spine of James Tedesco, Luke Keary, Sam Walker, Brendan Smith, and Victor Radley, if you include your 13 in your spine, which I think you should do these days. So it has to be up there with the best, if not the best in the comp. So on paper, they've got one of the best squads, 1 to 13 at least. They're pretty much all rep players, and I think that shows, and they show how much class they have, and they take it minor premiership this season. So that is my ladder prediction for 2023. Let me know what you think where your team will finish in the comments, and if you made it this far, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.